Legislature's back in session. We're back on the suspended discussion on Bill 192. I believe when we left this bill on Tuesday, Senator Tom Atta had an amendment that he was going to commit to writing.
Right.
So
I think, Mr. Speaker, if I may, I'd like to withdraw whatever amendment we were discussing then. And we have since then actually put into writing all the amendments to be made. Right now,
all right, there being no objection to withdrawing the oral amendment and instead moving forward with the written amendments. Hearing no objection.
So, Mr. Speaker, I would like to go ahead and proffer the First Amendment here. And it's being passed around. It shows there for Substitute Bill 192, Amendment Number 1, and you see my initials, TCA. Does everybody have that? Okay. The amendment to be made is it's on page 3, lines 7 through 21. And basically, that has to do with the issue of scholarships. In particular, the eligibility criteria. So in the amendment sheet here, I just took that whole paragraph that's in the original bill, and I show on the amendment form here the amendments to be made. The first amendment there, of course, is the paragraph F1. And that is the eligibility requirement will be that the applicant must be a bona fide resident of Guam, paying income taxes to the government of Guam, or is a dependent of a parent or legal guardian who pays income taxes to the government of Guam. So that would be the First Amendment to the eligibility criteria. So there must be that situation of the individual pays taxes on Guam, or his parent or his legal guardian. The second part that's changed is the original bill allowed for citizens or permanent resident aliens of the United States to be eligible for the scholarship. And the amendment that I'm making there is to really make it available only to the citizens of the United States. And I made that amendment because I believe that the funds for this scholarship program is going to be limited. And so I think we're probably going to need to kind of narrow that pool that will be eligible. But in the same token, you'll see further down that I'm also widening it somewhat. So at any rate, then the second amendment there is that it's going to be available only to U.S. citizens. The third amendment there is paragraph F3. Originally, it required that the applicant have a grade point average in school of not less than 3.0. And I'm suggesting that the criteria really should be at a 2.5. And then finally, it was just on F5, it's really just a matter of form, whereas instead of saying must be in financial need, to delete must be in and just say demonstrates financial need. And we'll find that that same language was actually used in Bill 198, which is a companion bill to 192. You'll also find the bottom there at the end of paragraph F5, it says there in parentheses, see TCA TRB JWP amendment that was made on November 1st. I didn't have the language with me at the time, but I recall that that amendment that was put in was language to the effect that the individual must have exhausted all federal assistance programs that's available and as certified by GCC. I would just ask legal counsel to basically insert that amendment that was made there earlier. Finally, on paragraph F6, the final eligibility criteria was that the person be a non-degree holder. And I'm saying I would like to see that the person shall not, instead, that it reads that the person shall not be a degree holder from an accredited U.S. education institution. And I put that in simply because I've come across folks who came from another foreign country. They got a degree there, but it's not being recognized, or in the case of an individual that I'm aware of, the individual got a degree in commerce or something like that, but found that the true calling was really to be in the nursing field. And that individual, and in fact, since arriving on Guam, that individual has been working in a clinic as a nurse's assistant and wants to go into that field, but cannot be availed of any assistance because the individual already has a degree. So I'm saying here I would like to see that, if the individual does not have a U.S. degree at an associate's level, that they should be eligible for consideration for this scholarship program. So that's the amendments that I'm proffering to make in paragraph F with regards to eligibility criteria for the scholarships. I don't know if you want to break it down, I guess.
All right, let's take it one by one.
Okay.
On the First Amendment, anybody wants to speak on one? Hearing no objection. 1. 2, permanent resident to U.S. citizen. Anybody wish to speak? Any objection? None. 3, reducing the GPA to 2.5. Anybody wish to speak? No objection. 5, well, no, but in section 5, subsection 5. Anybody wish to speak on that amendment? Hearing none, no objection. 6, anybody wish to speak on that? Senator Gutherds.
Mr. Speaker, I think I understand the intent of number 6, but I'm confused a little bit by the language used. It says, shall not be a degree holder from an accredited U.S. education institution. Now, are we saying, therefore, if you do have a degree, let's say someone has an AA degree in electronics, but they want to go into carpentry. They want to be a carpenter. They don't want to be an electronics person. Are we saying that they would not be able to qualify for this?
Senator, do you yield to the question?
Well, I guess if there's an associate's degree program, and I'm assuming that this is for an associate's degree, I don't believe there's an associate's degree program in carpentry.
Well, whatever. No, I'm saying. Okay, wait a minute.
The intent
Are
here,
we saying that they have to apply for an associate's degree? What if they have a certificate program? Because not everyone that goes to GCC gets an associate's degree. They have certificates as well.
Senator Ada?
well, maybe really the author of the bill should respond to that, because in reading through this, it never made the specific reference to an associate's degree program, but one kind of surmises that that's what we're referring to, and that's why in one of my amendments I make specific reference to an associate's degree program.
Yeah.
So it gives the, so I really don't know. I'm just assuming. That's why I clarified that in one of my next amendments.
All right.
That this is for, this
I
scholarship
think it's to
is
prevent
for an
professional
associate's degree
students
program.
from getting scholarships.
Okay. Well, I'd like to, I would like to suggest that we need to look at that because, and I'm sure the author of the bill itself would want to think about this because GCC offers degree programs. They also offer certifications in certain areas that are not actual degrees, but are what are required by the U.S. Department of Labor for journeymen and for people of that specialty. And we might be defeating the purpose of the entire scholarship if it's just going to be for people seeking an AA degree, because GCC is doing a lot of stuff that doesn't end with a degree, but ends with a certification as a journeyman or something of that nature. So we may not be doing this in a way that really helps those that we would like to help. If maybe the main sponsor can yield as suggested.
Senator Duenas, do you yield?
Yes, I do, Mr. Speaker,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. Exactly. I mean, the intent here is for a degreed program, and the idea is as has been expressed, is such that you don't have individuals with degrees already receiving scholarships to further education or the like. This is designed to bring people into the fold to aspire to post-secondary education, and so the purpose here and the intent thereof. And I think I think we would be reading in a little bit to certificated or specialty type of apprenticeships per se in specialty fields that are not necessarily a degreed program, and I don't see that affecting this. I wouldn't see an individual graduating from a journeyman status in a specialty field like a carpenter or electrician or something like that as having an issue with other degreed fields.
Please speak to the mic and
Speak to the chair.
So I think we just need to clarify that individuals that are seeking certificate programs that are recognized by the U.S. Department of Labor would not be participating in this program. That's basically what we're saying then. That this program is only going to apply for people seeking degrees, 2-year degrees at GCC. That's what we're saying, I guess, right? But what I'm trying to point out is that that may not be the ideal thing to do in this case.
Well, I would say to that, Mr. Chair, that one of the reasons why, and unfortunately we were well, fortunately too, we were limited to 2 bills in this session, and the third bill, companion bill to this, it applies more to journeymen and a specific career type program certifications through Trades Academy. And that's why we covered all disciplines. And so we're really trying to narrow the academic portion of degreed programs within GCC, knowing that they have also a strong partnership with Trades Academy. And there is, hopefully in the next session, the Trades Academy bill will make it to the floor.
Okay, I understand that, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the clarification. Just one more thing on this, just to make it clear then. Item number 6 in the proposed amendment shall not be a degree holder from an accredited U.S. education institution. So what we're trying to say here is that under eligibility, that they may consider individuals that graduated from foreign institutions, but not U.S. institutions, to participate in this program. But I think we may want to say it a little differently, because the way this is worded sounds like, it sounds like that we may be discriminating against U.S. institutions. So maybe the way to say it is that may be a non-degree holder, or may be a degree holder from a foreign institution. rather than say cannot be from a U.S. institution. Yeah, you know, see what I'm saying? I'm trying to use a different way of saying this. Because if you say it this way, you know, it doesn't sound right to me. The way it's stated doesn't sound right to me. I think may...
We'll take a minute.
Yeah.
Legislature is back in sessions. Centrata, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Going back to that line F, paragraph F6, if we could then amend that language instead of reading as it is shown there, to amend it to read, may be a degree holder from a foreign post-secondary education institution.
May be a degree holder from
A foreign post-secondary
foreign
education institution.
secondary educational institution. On the amendment, Can, can you please make sure we have that in writing?
Yes, ma'am. It's all here.
No, the new one.
Yes.
Okay, so on the amendment, no objections? So ordered.
I have, Madam Speaker, a second amendment.
So I just want to make sure then that, so for F on scholarship, now we've gone through every single one of them and that completes then that amendment. Okay. Your second amendment, Centrada.
The second amendment has also been passed out. It shows there on top of my initials, amendment number 2. And the amendment is on page 4, lines 17 through 21, which deals with service requirements. Now, right now, well, on it's not clear. It just says that if the individual he shall be obligated to work on Guam for a period of 1 year, commencing 6 months from completion of their degree program. But what if it's just not clear whether is it, you know, if he got assistance for 2 years, is it still just 1 year? So I put the amendment in there. It shows he shall be obligated to work on Guam for a period of 1 year for every year of assistance received. So it's really a one-to-one. And then on the next line, commencing no later than. So if the individual completes his program or disenrolls, he must then, in this case here, shall be obligated to work on Guam no later than 6 months after the completion of their degree program. So, you know, he could start it the third month afterwards, but he's got up to 6 months to find a job and start working. And then I put in there the amendment to make it clear that we are talking about an associate's degree program as opposed to just a degree program. But now, the way this currently reads is that the student must begin work 6 months after completion of their associate's degree program. And I would like to suggest that what if that individual, after they finish their associate's degree program, decides that they want to go into a 4-year program? So he gets his associate's degree in electronics engineering, and basically with another 2 years he can get a full engineering degree. And so I put in there the qualifier that he has to begin working after he completes his associate's degree program or a higher degree program, or no later than 6 months immediately following non-enrollment from GCC or a higher degree program. So as long as the individual is still pursuing a higher degree, this service requirement really does not kick in. So that's my amendment, Madam Speaker.
On the amendment, Senator Guthert, you're recognized.
Thank you. I think this is a good amendment, Madam Speaker, but we need to add to it, and I have a suggested amendment. And it should be something like this, thinking out loud just for your input at this point. In the event the student does not complete the degree program at Guam Community College, they shall reimburse the government of Guam for all tuition and related expenses paid on their behalf within 60 days of withdrawal from the program.
Senator, you might want to look on page 4 on line 22.
Oh, we already have that?
who
Okay.
fails to fulfill the provisions of section
Okay, I'm
must
sorry.
repay
Okay.
the full amount of the
Thank you, Madam
scholarship.
Speaker.
Okay, thank you, Senator. So on the Senator Ada's amendment, are there any objections? No objections, so ordered.
Madam Speaker, I have one last amendment. And
Did you give us a copy of the amendment?
yes, you should have 3 amendments there. This one,
I only
next
have
one is,
2.
you
Is there-
see there, amendment number 3 above my initials. And this is an amendment on page 5.
Number 3. We're checking to see because I don't have a copy. One moment, please.
You can get it because it's
Okay,
on my
there.
desk.
Thank you. Yes, Senator, you may proceed. Page 5.
Right now,
Oh, no, this is the same. This is F. No, this is number 1 you gave me.
On page 5, the amendment is really more of a technical amendment. And on paragraph C there, starting on line 1, the paragraph C, line 1 through line 6. And it should read as follows. If a student enlists, remove the word is. So if a student enlists to serve on active duty in a branch of the U.S. Armed Services, delete the words while in attendance and replace it with during the course of or upon completion of studies. So in other words, he completes his associate's degree and decides to join the military because they're giving him a good bonus program or whatever. So instead of serving on Guam within 6 months as required, he decides to join the service. That condition then would basically postpone the service requirements until that student returns to work on Guam after he has completed his enlistment, but in no case longer than 6 years afterwards. So in other words, he may have enlisted for 6 years, and so after that 6 years, if he decides he wants to stay, then he has to repay. Otherwise, if he decides to get out, then that service requirement kicks in after that 6 years. Provided that the student applies for the postponement within 90 days of entering the armed services and continues to maintain Guam as such student's home of record as opposed to place of residence.
On the amendment, no objections? Hearing none, so ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just have a couple of items that maybe if the author would yield. I have a question on page 3 regarding benefits. First, it talks about that the program, the value of the scholarship will be $5,000. And it provides that the $5,000 scholarship will be given out, dispersed in 2 equal installments. One at the beginning of the individual's freshman year, and then the second installment, $2,500, will be paid at the beginning of the individual's, at the beginning of the sophomore year. And I'm just, maybe if the author could elaborate on why not give him that, that leg up all in the first year. Just catapult him into the program, and then hopefully by his second year he would have gotten his finances in order and will be able to survive on his own after that, as opposed to, just half the first year and half the second year. Maybe if he can just elaborate on that.
Senator Duenas, do you to the question?
I would be happy to, Madam Speaker. In speaking with representatives from both the Guam Community College as well as the University of Guam, one of the difficulties that they have experienced, even in other scholarship programs, And in general, maybe just an indication of the economy and what students need to do to survive, is retention, the issue of retaining them in the programs. Starting doesn't seem to be a problem, and getting midway through, but then from time to time we do have a drop-off. And this is reflected nationally as well. And so the intention is to provide some incentive, even if the individual does return to the program, to complete on the basis of that is when they would receive the second portion of tuition relief, by virtue of this scholarship. So it was simply placed in there with that intention in mind to provide for retention.
Senator Ada, are you satisfied with the answer?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And then I just have one more question, if the author will yield again. On page 3, line 26, it says there that the first installment shall be payable at the beginning of the recipient's first semester. And my question is, payable to who? Payable to GCC or payable to the individual?
In speaking,
I think maybe that might be in that amendment that Senator Munoz Barnes had proffered yesterday and passed, that it would be at the university to the institution for tuition and books. Is that?
Okay, so if that was addressed in a...
So maybe if you would like the Senator Munoz Barnes to read that over again, because I think that would have addressed your question. Okay.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much. I'll go ahead and read that amendment that was proffered and passed. It would be after the section 34102G. At the end of that, it would be scholarship funds shall be payable exclusively to GCC for tuition or books, or as reimbursements to scholarship recipient upon evidence of prior payment of tuition and books and according to the rules and regulations.
Yes, thank you very much. Senator Ada, there's...
Yes, Speaker, that's fine. Thank you.
The institution. Okay. So I don't have anyone else on the motion. Is there anyone who would like to speak on the main motion? Senator Duenas, would you like to close?
Buenas tardes, Madam Speaker. Mago Fubago, sa todo si Zoku College Chairman Manay undangkulun na oportunidad para mas make good at mas maulik estina pinaponi as 192-31 si Jus Masi para todo Hamzul na Manay todo zomo no amendment siya. Madam Speaker, good afternoon, and thank you very much for the opportunity to close. And I'm thankful to my colleagues that have really done a good job in making this bill a much stronger bill, a better bill, and it's something that I think will be beneficial to our people. It's not a magic bullet, as I said from the beginning, but it certainly is an opportunity, an added opportunity for us to seek for additional funding and resources to help our people receive post-secondary education training as we move forward on developing, enhancing, and improving our workforce on Guam, Madam Speaker, for the coming years. Not just for the build-up or those things that are purported, but because our people deserve opportunities with whatever economic drivers that we will push forward on with our economy going forward, Madam Speaker. As a result of all of the input, Madam Speaker, I would like to move that on this particular bill, of course, as I said, I would like you to be an amendment for you to be number 2, and that followed by.
We did pass that amendment earlier. It was, yes, Juan Pat Guthertz and Munya Barnes.
Okay,
Yes.
Juan Pat Guthertz, Munya Barnes, and I was going to add Tom Atta as well.
On that motion, without any objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I am complete with my closing.
So on the motion then to send Bill 192-31 to third reading file without any objections, so ordered. We can reconsider. Yeah. I don't mind. I can move down.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to move to reconsider. I know there was a motion earlier to put
Send
you
it
and I as
down.
co-sponsors, but in all fairness, Senator Atta did work a lot, and I think it's only fair that he be number 2. He really worked hard on it, so thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So we'll all move. Don't worry, Senator Guthertz. I'll move down to number 3.
Yeah, I didn't know that, and I apologize.
So on that motion, without any objections, and so ordered. So it will read Chris Duenas, Tom Atta, Juan Pat Guthertz, and Munya Barnes. Okay. All right. Now we will continue again with Senator Duenas on substitute bill number 198.
Sidus Masi, Madam Speaker. Kohulutu Zanzahu ta pega I Bill 198. Papa gi mina tres na tinaitay. Sa malago zulo ko ita diskuti asti na prinaponi. Sidus Masi por the oportunidad.
Malagwa pun Quintus?
Hunggan, malago zulo
Yes,
kwantis.
Sige.
Kala nervous didi sa tiutungo antes na sinyo un talaika I-sponsor siya no sa mamalo do pago sa tiu pega si Tom Atta gi number 2 sa kon todo esti I Bill 198 at sogi todo I amendment siya tiu mine.
Tiu
No.
mine na numero 3 jo.
Okay. Pues be para esti I first amendment para esti na pernaponi. Ang zangin sinya.
Lo
Pe pega loku gi 198 si Guao sa an Papa Guao si Senyor Tom Atta.
Tisinya sa gagis ta si Yamashita.
I know.
Mina 3.
Mina Tres. Si Tom Atta. Si Diyos Masi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker,
amendment then, no objections ordered.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak on Bill 198 as substituted. Madam Speaker, with this particular piece of legislation as well, it really is companion legislation to Bill 192. And it seeks to do the same thing, to provide opportunities for our people to avail themselves of a post-secondary educational opportunity, to receive an opportunity for scholarships through various funding sources, namely, and one of the funding sources that I would like to explore, as in 192, is the opportunity to revisit some of the GITA certificates, tax certificates, and other opportunities with regard to funding sources for our people. And so, Madam Speaker, really not a whole bunch to add to the intent, and just it recognizes another higher learning institution, our premier higher learning institution, the University of Guam, as the recipient of this scholarship opportunity to be issued out to potential students in the future. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to speak on Bill 198.
You're welcome. I have amendments from Senator Tom Adda, so you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Of course, I rise in support of the bill. And I would like to just go ahead and get to the heart of the matter and make a couple of amendments to the bill. You'll find on your, it's been passed out, it says amendment number 1 above my initials there. This is an amendment on page, starting on page 3, again, which deals with scholarships. And it deals with the issue of eligibility criteria. So it begins on page 3, line 24, and ends on line 13. Ends on line 13 on page 5. And basically then, so I've taken the whole paragraph and I've shown the amendments there. Again, the first eligibility criteria regarding residency requirements is similar to what we discussed earlier, that the individual must be a bona fide resident of Guam paying income taxes to the government of Guam, or is a dependent of a parent or legal guardian who pays income taxes to the government of Guam. Paragraph B, second eligibility criteria.
Senator Adda, we'll go ahead and do it the same way
Okay.
we did, so one at a time then.
All right.
So on that First Amendment, any objections? No objections, so ordered. You may continue.
The second eligibility requirement is basically that this will be limited to only citizens of the United States.
On the amendment, without any objections, so ordered.
The third eligibility requirement is to really relax the cumulative GPA that the individual must have achieved in high school from a 3.0 down to a 2.5.
On the amendment, without any objections, so ordered.
The third amendment, the next one will be on paragraph E. It says that it does not, the individual must not already hold a bachelor's degree. And I guess this one is going to have to take some, we're going to need to look at this because I think the language that we used earlier was that the individual may
Be a degree holder from
be a degree holder from a foreign
ed-
educational institution,
Yes. So you want to take a
as,
brief break?
as opposed to, yeah. so-
or do you want legal counsel to incorporate that with what's an E right now?
Yes, I think
Just
it's
maybe just repeat it then.
correct.
That, to ensure that the language that we included for GCC, where it says that may be a degree holder from a foreign post-secondary education
Yeah.
institution. That was the one that was passed for the GCC. Or unless you want to take a brief recess, so you can figure out.
Well,
the
actually, I
language.
think with the individual having a bachelor's degree already, I don't know. I mean, that one, I'm going to leave it to the body to decide whether they want to relax that and allow somebody with a bachelor's degree from a foreign institution, but not allow somebody with a bachelor's degree from a U.S. institution. I think there's a little bit of difference here already.
There is. Can,
So,
Tina.
I think what I would like to do actually is maybe just keep it in the original language that the individual must not already hold a bachelor's degree, period. Yes, so I would like to change that and leave the original language, and simply the criteria will be that it's somebody who does not have a bachelor's degree,
Okay,
period.
period. Got it. On the amendment, no objection? So ordered.
And then finally, on paragraph F there, was just to add in the whatever that language was that the TCA Barnes Wampat amendment that was made on November 1st, that the individual must have exhausted all the federal assistance programs, in this case as certified by UOG.
Yes.
And maybe if legal counsel can go ahead and add in those words.
Yes, I have the amendment here, so we'll make sure then that that's included. That and must exhaust all federal sources that may be available for economically disadvantaged students as certified by, and then it'll be UOG. Therefore, an applicant for a scholarship under this act may be considered for this scholarship. That's the language that was passed.
Yes.
Okay. So on that amendment, without any objections, so ordered.
And then finally, on page 5 of the bill, lines 7 through 12. And this, again, of course, has to do with the individual's decision to join military service. So then the amendments that are shown that now it should read, if a student enlists to serve on active duty in a branch of the U.S. Armed Services while in attendance or upon completion of studies, the service requirement shall be postponed until such student returns to work on Guam, but in no case longer than 6 years. Provided, however, that the student applies for the postponement within 90 days of entering the armed services and continues to maintain Guam as such student's home of record.
On the amendment, no objections, so ordered. Senator Munya Barnes, you have your amendment? Mhm. Yes. Oh, I thought it's on your desk, I think. It's on your desk. Just, Francis, just give it to Tom. Tom, let her borrow that for now. Oh, ready? Okay. Senator Munya Barnes?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I just want to again add the following sentence to that section 34102G. Or where would that be? It would be
On, let's see, that would be
34142.
under the funding source.
You just have to refit it. Let me look at it.
Yeah, it should be
Ma- ma'am-
under funding source.
Madam, because the bills are same, but the positioning of the documentation, I think I'd want to put it, Madam Speaker, under the funding source, and that would be on section 3.
Yeah, section 3, page 6.
Right after D.
Okay.
It would read, scholarship funds shall be payable exclusively to UOG for tuition or books or as reimbursement to scholarship recipient upon evidence of prior payment of tuition and books and according to the rules and regulations.
Okay. Yes. So it's the same amendment that was used for GCC. It just designates where it's going to go.
Right,
and
Madam
what it's
Speaker,
to
this would
used
be
for.
the JWP and the TRMB amendment. So that would be on page 6, line 19. After the word section.
On the amendment, no objections, so ordered. Thank you, Senator. So we can have that back up
Thank
here
you.
again. Yes. On the motion, is there anybody who would like to speak on the bill? Is there any one other amendment that was for GCC that should be reflected here as well? On the motion, is there anybody who'd like to speak? So Senator Duenas, do you want to close? Send it down? On the motion then to send Bill 198-31 to the third reading file without any objections, so ordered. Thank you. Oh, Vice Speaker.
Thank you, Ron. Bill 210. Speaker Wampat, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to make a motion to place Bill 210 in third reading file, and if I may, I would like to just briefly discuss it.
Hearing no objection, so ordered.
Thank you again very much. Mr. Speaker, Bill number 210 is titled the Cash Economy Enforcement Act of 2011. This act in itself can potentially generate millions of dollars in both direct and indirect revenues for our island. Similar legislation was passed in Hawaii several years ago and has assisted the state in enforcement and collection of millions of dollars in unreported and underreported taxes. This legislation is not meant to deter or regulate our local entrepreneurs from doing business on Guam. It simply levels the playing field for the thousands of businesses that are in compliance and ensuring that those high-risk cash-based businesses that continually underreport or do not report these taxes are in fact living up to their responsibilities. The Tax Enforcement Division already has enforcement abilities, so Bill 210 will implement penalties and fines for those who are not complying with the law. The bill would also has a provision that during the initial outreach efforts, no citations will be issued. The goal is to advise and educate taxpayers of their tax responsibilities. The act also creates a new filing requirement for contractors on federal construction projects who do not possess a valid Guam business license at the time the contract is awarded. A report must be filed with the Department of Revenue and Taxation with an estimate of the gross receipts or any other information requested by the department within 30 days of the contract award date. The bill would greatly discourage businesses or individuals from generating income through illegal or unauthorized means. It will encourage legitimate businesses and individuals to comply with the law to report income. It will provide Reventax with more enforcement abilities and adds teeth to existing enforcement laws to assess fines and penalties for those businesses who underreport or not report taxes. The expected income is that additional taxable revenues, both direct and indirect revenues, may be collected to sustain, if not improve upon the delivery of government goods and services. I'd like to just provide a little evidence of what it is I'm talking about that we were able to receive from Reventax, is that the underground economy is roughly about 10% of a country's GDP. And in this case, Guam's estimated GDP for 2005 and further is at $2.5 billion, which translates to approximately 250 million in unreported or underreported income, of which half or even 125 million can be attributed to Guam's cash economy. But what I like, and that is the general summary of what the bill is about, but what I like to ask, of course, our colleagues here to consider, but legal counsel is here, and this is the question that maybe Senator Pangilinan can respond, because it went through his committee, and the report that came out was this language on page 4 that says, any criminal investigations originating as a result of information reported by a member of the general public shall require that the department obtain the identity of the person providing the information. And the concern I have here then is when you say you must identify the individual who are reporting this versus anyone who may know of some of these things actually happening and may want to call in and remain anonymous, would it not then be considered a valid complaint? And that was my concern, and that's why I bring it up first before I move to delete it. Yes.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. To clarify, what we wanted to do is the IRS has its hotline now where people can call in and then they can begin the investigation and they have the provisions under the IRS code for how they can act when those kind of tips come in. But this is for a civil enforcement of the civil provisions of the business licensing law. And so it really could be abused, I think, in terms of if you're just going to do a criminal investigation based upon an anonymous tip to enforce the civil portion of the violation of the business license law. And so we wanted to distinguish between being able to civilly move forward on the enforcement side from information versus the criminal side, because it really can lead to abuse with regards to the disruption of an individual's business if it's just anybody can come in and Rev Tax has to go in there and do a criminal investigation, which means, access, subpoenas, and everything else. I think if you're going to be doing a criminal investigation, then you at least have to, have some idea that it's credible. Now, it doesn't require you to release the person's identity to somebody else, but if all they do is call in and you run off and get subpoenas and disrupt a business activity, I think you should be able to at least have some idea that you're talking to not a competitor on the other side of that business, that you can follow up, you can look at their records, follow up for questions with the individual, but it doesn't require you to release it to the owner of the business that you're going to be investigating. It's just so that Rev Tax can ensure that they're not being sent on wild goose chases or to disrupt the individual's competitor's business, that you have to be able, Rev Tax has to be able to know at least who's calling in so that they can make some kind of judgment on the criminal side. But if it's just on the civil side, like somebody calls and say, hey, these guys aren't displaying their business license, things like that, but you're saying, hey, they're not paying their taxes for this year and this year and this year, or something like that, or they're under-ringing registers, and that is part of the criminal side, that in order to begin that investigation, that they've got to be able to verify some additional information, and they have to be able to identify that person. So again, I'm very leery of just what can occur in these kind of situations in terms of if they have this unlimited, unfettered power to move on the criminal side, and somebody, a competitor, can just call in and disrupt his competitor's business and ruin something like that. So that's why we were specific, because the original language was, I think, just not allowing anybody to have that information. But I think we wanted to distinguish between the civil penalty side and the criminal activity side of tax evasion and things like that, that you should at least be able to know who you're talking to. And if they're going to do it from there, they already have some guidance with regards to the IRS code, because that would be on the tax side already. So because this is a civil matter, we're not requiring that on the civil side of the enforcement, but on the criminal side, we're requiring that additional protection for the businesses out there that may have a competitor just decide that I'm going to give tips every day to this guy, and they come in there and they disrupt his business, and that's how they treat competition. Again, it's just being a little bit cautious to protect those businesses out there that may be subjected to that kind of a competitive environment.
Thank you very much for that. I really appreciate that. And I agree. The most important thing I feel then is that, and through, of course, the testimonies here, and we will definitely let Reverend Tax know, is that at least do not divulge or release, the names of these individuals, because we want to make sure, yes, is that we also protect them. We don't want to we want to make sure that, right, if they identify themselves, then we'll know that this is really a legitimate complaint. So thank you very much for that response. On page 11, I know that based from what we originally had from the original bill, where that section 3 was deleted, but there is because the Better Public Service Fund has been created already. But the big difference here, that really, when I said earlier, is that it will provide teeth to this legislation, is that the complaint has always been we're increasing the responsibilities, but we're not giving them the revenues to be able to do this. And what I would like to do on line 20, where it says A, is to add, and I'm not changing that, I'm leaving that there, but to add a new A and then renumber everything, is that because currently a percentage of 10% of all fees and license revenues and that they receive is deposited into this fund. And what I like, and that's in the current law, but I would like to make an amendment then to increase that to 15%. That 15% of all fees and license revenues received by the Department of Revenue and Taxation shall be deposited into said fund. I'm going to have to turn it in.
For everybody's purposes, the original bill had it in it.
Yes.
And so we'll use that for the clerk's office as they're trying to find the amendment. The original bill has it on page 12.
And it was sub-item B.
And the speaker wants to put it back in the substituted bill.
And make it A and then renumber the other subsections.
Is that clear with everyone? Well, all she wants to do is she wants to put the B that's there, what is B on page 12 of the original bill, she wants it to be the new A in the substituted bill.
Yes, thank you very much.
I'm not sure if it'd be easier if we retyped it so that everybody understands it, or is everybody clear? She wants that to be A and everything else remembered. A in the substitute.
Unless legal counsel feels that there's a better place to put it, maybe I can make that general amendment then, that if there is a better, or should it just be a new section Would that be easier? Just leave everything as is and just put a new, actually put a new section 3, because you know why? If you look at the numbering here, it has to be renumbered because we went from 2 to 4. So let's just make that a new section 3 then and put in that language. Is that better? I'm looking at legal counsel and the clerk. Yes. So that would be a better motion then. So I'll withdraw my other motion then and instead make it a new section 3. Mr. Speaker?
So it'll be a new section 3 that'll read section 161101
Yes, better
will
public
be
service
amended
fund,
to have
15%.
read 15% rather than the 10% as is currently in the statute.
Yes.
Because the substituted bill just completely drops
Yes.
1.
Uh-huh.
What? Well, no. It just, in the original bill, the speaker had an amendment to 161101, and the committee substituted it by completely dropping it and making all the amendments in 161102. No.
So what it is section, so you would have the Better Public Service Fund that's amended, and it will be 161101, chapter 161 of Title 11, Guam Code Annotated, is hereby amended to read, and then we'll go to B, 15% of all fees and licensing revenues received by the Department of Revenue and Taxation shall be deposited into said fund. Since the fund has been created already, it's there in place. So that's why I'm making that now a new section 3, which is like the section 3 on the original bill, page 12, but only taking where it says the title section 3, and then Better Public Service Fund, which is lines 6 to 8, and then take lines 11 and 12.
We'll take a minute.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for that brief recess. We were able then to find that it was the language that was originally in section 3, which was totally deleted, but was incorporated on page 6, where it talks about any, like line 9 and 12, where it talks about, any fine that has been assessed, that 100% of those fines then will go into this Better Public Service Fund. And I think to make it even clearer, as suggested, that when we were talking about this section, but maybe it'll be much clearer, like on page 6, on line 9, that any fine assessed under this section, that be under this chapter instead of section. Because if you read further in the bill, then other than just sections, let me see, earlier in the bill it talks about another section. We want to make sure that it's really all under that particular chapter 71. So that would be then the amendment for that on page 6, line 9, change section to chapter.
Let's see if I get this clear. On line 9, you want to change section to chapter?
Chapter, yes.
So it'll read, any fine assessed under this chapter shall be a matter of the regulatory division under this chapter and shall be retained and
yes.
deposited into the better.
Okay, well, and then a general, I guess, a technical on the wording of that, but that was somehow one of those chapters will go.
Legal counsel, are we
Legal
clear?
counsel? We changed section to chapter, but on line 10, it says division under this chapter. It's okay?
Chapter. All right,
Okay.
fine.
I'm following legal counsel.
All right. You're still recognized, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. So anyway, there will have to be a renumbering, so that's a general amendment because we went from 2 to 4 on page 11, so that would have to be renumbered. And then section 5, that'll be renumbered to 4 on page 12. The new amendments here really is on section 4, which is on your bill it says chapter 5, but it's 4. It's a new plan that's been put together here, which will have Rev and Tax now go through to set up the administrative rules for this. It would, and to provide additional information. These are all new, which is to include 5 years of benchmark statistics of business licenses by industry, by employee size, and by reported income. The third is to include estimated tax losses by categories outlined in 2. 4, create a priority plan of enforcement by industry that yields highest estimated revenue return. And 5, document an educational outreach campaign for all industries identified in 4. Then we have C and D here now, which is going to be requiring the department to do all this, and there's 180 days after the approval of the implementation plan, and then again another 180 days in which then, and then this is what I want to concern is that I hope that these are not 180 days and then another 180 days, but that both of them are to be done within 180 days. Otherwise, I do have an amendment in which I want to be able to reduce that time frame. Is there any I'm not sure who to ask this question, but the AAA process, how long does that normally take? And if we're going to be, you know, how many days? Does anyone know how many days for AAA? 90 days. So then, see what this does then, because I like everyone to please consider this. If you look on page 13, on line C, it's 180 days that, you know, the director must then report to the legislature and to determine the number of employees that will be needed to conduct this investigation. Then you go to line 10, then there's another 180 days after the approval of this plan, and it goes to the governor, the legislature, and the public auditor. And then you go to section 6 and line 21, and then now it's 365 days later. I mean, this won't even be an implementation for 2 years, and we won't be able to realize, you know, of course, any monies here. And I just think that, and I would like to, of course, if I may, rather than just making the amendment right now to start reducing this, is have a brief recess to make sure then amongst ourselves that we really want to put reasonable time to be able to go through the AAA process, which would be like 90 days. So, you know, and then, so this is, once we change one time frame, it will affect the second and then the third. So may I please ask for a brief recess?
We stand in recess.
Line 3, 10, and 21.
Legislature's back in session.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for that time. I had some conversations with our colleagues, and this is what I would like to recommend that I think would be much more reasonable. On line 3, that rather than 180 days, that it would be 30 days. Line 10, that would also be 30 days. And then this will continue, the practice will continue, but it will not go into effect where they will start fining these companies for then, instead of 365 days, consecutive days, but 180 consecutive days. Because like I said earlier, is that yes, we want this to be an educational program as well to get everybody into compliance. And I think that 180 days should be sufficient. 180 consecutive days. So that those 3 are my amendments.
So on line 3, the 180 will be amended to read 30.
My stand.
Senator Blas, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I know what the good lady from Malo is trying to do here, but whether it be 30, 180, or 365 days, if you read the whole sentence, it says, after approval of the implementation plan required in Section 5A. Section 5A is just, all it says is submission. There's no mechanism for approval. Am I to assume that 5A is reference to 5A found on page 12?
Correct.
All that is just a submission. There's no approval process there.
We're going to take a short recess.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to withdraw that amendment, and I'll try to make it all inclusive to take into consideration the concerns of our colleagues here. So I withdraw then that original amendment.
Hearing no objection.
Okay, the new amendment then is on page 12, which talks about the reporting and the plans here, what needs to be reported to the legislature. And on page 12, line 17, after the word plan, shall submit an implementation plan within 45 days upon enactment for the Cash Economy Enforcement Act of 2011. So the new words are within 45 days upon enactment. That's the
I'm not
first.
sure if it would read better at the end of the line.
At the end of the line? Okay. So then, implementation plan for the Cash Economy Enforcement Act of 2011 to the Speaker of the Legislature within 45 days upon enactment.
Correct.
Okay.
Hearing no objection to that amendment.
And then if you go to page 13, line C, to change 180 days to 30 days.
Anybody wish to speak on that amendment? Seeing none, hearing no
And-
objection.
And then just go ahead and delete 5A on line 4. So it would just be required in this section, because that's all part of that section, 5A or 5.
Hearing no objection.
And then on line 10, also delete 180 days and make it 30 days.
Anybody wish to speak on that amendment? Hearing and seeing none.
And then on line 21, rather than 365 days, put 180 consecutive days.
Anybody wish to speak on that amendment? Seeing no hands, hearing no objection. Anything else, Madam Speaker?
And lastly, then, I would like to ask if we can please make Speaker Pangilinan the second co-sponsor.
Hearing no objection. Anything else, Madam Speaker?
No, I just, if we can send the bill down to third reading file, thank you.
Well, no, we still have others that might want to speak. I'm sorry. That was a nice try, but, and I am dictatorial, but even I wouldn't pull that. Any others wish to, any other senators wish to speak on the bill? Senator Ben Pangilinan.
Thank you, and Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, very short, quickly here. I want to rise in support of the bill, commend the efforts of the author to try and, number one, ensure that there is a level playing field out there. We hear the stories, and some of it is anecdotal, or almost all of them are anecdotal, but we know that there's an element of truth in everything that we hear out there. And we do know that there is leakage within our economy with regards to the enforcement, and that the effort that's being proposed today will not only close some of those holes within our enforcement system, but also provide additional resource to the enforcement authorities so that they can go about doing their work. And ensuring that the people that are supposed to pay tax, etc. And so, Mr. Speaker, I do want to say that I think that this bill is a positive effort to ensure that revenue and taxation gets additional resources and additional authority with clearer definition and clearer lines in order to enforce them. So, thank you, and Sidus Masi.
Any others wish to be heard on the main bill, on the main motion? Seeing no hands, on the motion to place the bill in voting file, any objection? And as much as I'm still up here, Senator Atta, you'll be next, Tony Atta, on Bill 212.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I requested motion that Bill 21231 is substituted by the Committee on Youth, Cultural Affairs, Procurement, General Operations, and Public Broadcasting be sent down to third reading file. I'd like to speak on the motion, please.
Hearing no objection, so ordered. You're recognized, Senator Atta.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, under existing laws, as we know that all government of Guam employees are protected from sexual harassment, except for our unclassified, temporary, and contractual employees. And sexual harassment is just one notch short of sexual assault, as is the case with recidivism associated with sex offenders. Sexual harassers also have the tendency to repeat their deeds and even escalate beyond harassment to assault. No employee in or outside of our government or in the classified or unclassified service should have to endure the humiliation of sexual harassment. Every employee should enjoy equal protections of our laws. Mr. Speaker, I ask you and my colleagues to pass Substitute Bill 212, and let's protect our employees from sexual harassment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Atta. Any other senators wish to be heard on Bill 212? Seeing no hands on the motion, Senator Atta, you may close. On the motion to send Bill 212 to the voting file, hearing no objection. Senator Guthridge, you're recognized on 226. I'm sitting here. Unless I get somebody to sit here, we'll get. Thank you. I'm sure you will, Senator Blas. That's quite all right. It was too late. Yeah. Oh, wait. I've been trying to. Senator Guthridge, 226.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and colleagues, and good afternoon to everyone. Mr. Speaker, Bill 226 is substituted. It's a bill I will discuss at this time, but I would like to point out that there is a companion bill, Bill 227, which will follow this bill for discussion. These two bills do serve two different purposes, though, although they are related. Substitute Bill 226 is a standalone measure, and I felt that introducing this first was important because as we look to the provisions of Bill 227 to hash out a stronger Made in Guam plan through the Guam Product Seal Program, there needs to be some immediate redress taking shape in the interim. And we do this in Bill 226. Bill 226, Mr. Speaker, is an act to add sections 50205, C, D, E, F, G, and H, and amend sections 50207C of Article 2, Division 2 of Title 12 Guam Code Annotated, requiring a country of origin label relative to the Guam Product Seal Permit Program. I introduced this bill with co-sponsors Sam Mabini, B.J. Cruz, Roy Respicio, and A.B. Palacios to help protect the image of Guam as a world-class destination. As a tourist destination, Mr. Speaker, thousands of items are offered to visitors on Guam as souvenirs or gifts to commemorate a visitor's travel to our island paradise, or for our residents to take abroad during individual travels. Creative marketing techniques that utilize the word Guam or Chamorro or derivatives of such often make it hard to delineate the source of these offerings. Some packaging may even display accompanying photos of foreign oceans, flora and fauna, and present them as Guam's unique locations to help sell a particular commodity. And to my colleagues, there are some examples of this packaging located in the back of the room for you to view. Thus, upon seeing the word Guam, Chamorro, or derivatives as such, with accompanying photos of various tropical scenes, some of which are not of Guam, consumers take this packaging at face value, particularly our visitors from Asian countries, and believe that they are purchasing an authentic Guam product. We learned that upon return to their home countries, these visitors, as do our residents, take pride in presenting mementos to friends and family of their visit during and after traveling to our island. However, these visitors and consumers are often disappointed to learn that an article they had purchased in Guam, thinking that it was made in Guam, was in fact made elsewhere. For most individuals, there is little recourse to reclaim their experiences as they have already traveled from the island. The administrative rules and regulations of the Guam Product Seal relative to the use of the words Guam or Chamorro or derivatives of such are clear in intent and were designed to achieve a number of goals. Among them, to encourage economic opportunities through manufacturing of local goods and products that rely on the Guam brand, and to assure the ultimate purchaser that they are indeed purchasing a product of Guam. For the welfare of all and the future of Guam brand and image, consumers should be able to easily and readily identify the origin of the product that use Guam or Chamorro derivatives thereof, absent any confusing, misleading, or deceiving suggestions, intentional or otherwise, on the packaging or containers of any product offered. All markings should appear guided by a degree of ethical standards and should be clearly and fairly labeled. It is the intent of the product to identify Guam and see through fruition the intent of the Guam Product Seal permit. That's the intent of this bill, program as intended. We had a very lively public hearing, and I want to thank dear Senator Pangilinan for organizing the hearing and conducting it so well. And with the approval of the good chairman, Speaker Ben, and as suggested by those who testified during the hearing on all sides of the bill, there have been some changes to the bill as introduced, and those changes are indicated in the substitute bill, all with underlines. I'd like to go through the changes. First, we added an intent, which I just paraphrased. Second, in Section 2, we simply added definitions. To do this, we used various recognized sources of information, including model legislation and actual legislation from places such as the state of Hawaii, and legal guidance on the country of origin labeling requirements of the federal government. Words important in these definitions include the following. Article. Article shall mean the commodity or product in a package or container that is available for purchase by the consumer. Perishable consumer commodity shall mean an article packaged and offered for consumption as a food product or for use by individuals for the purpose of personal care or in the performance of services ordinarily rendered in or about the household in connection with personal possessions, and is intended to have limited shelf life, but not limited to articles such as baked goods, dairy products, cut or dried flowers, fruits, vegetables, and meats, coffee, candy, cookies, jams, jellies, juices, oils, nuts, or such similar products. Standard labeling practices shall be defined by the most current rules and regulations that have been established by the United States Food and Drug Administration relative to general food labeling requirements. Permanent refers to the print on the article's packaging and container designed to remain until received by the end user or ultimate user purchaser at the point of sale in retail establishments. Legible means shall mean markings which are clearly identified and which can be read without strain. Conspicuous shall be reflected by markings which appear on the article's packaging and container in a place which is readily accessible and where the marking noting the product's origin can be found upon casual examination. In Section 3, as suggested from the public hearing, we tightened up the language, and you will see the strike-through from the bill. The changes are double underlined. So for item C on page 3, lines 15 to 17, it now states, it shall be unlawful for persons or any retail store, wholesaler, manufacturer, importer, distributor, or business establishment to sell in articles offered as perishable consumer commodity. We defined what perishable consumer commodity is in Section 2 by mirroring the Made in Hawaii definition and deleted the former language of consumable commodity in the section. The fourth, on line 20 of page 3, we noted that the made in phrase or product of phrase shall be permanently affixed to packaging in conformance with the labeling requirements. This was done at the request of the Department of Customs and Quarantine, so that wholesalers do not simply come down to the port with a roll of tape and affix the required made in designation phrase to meet the minimum requirements of the law, and then later, after they receive the products and then start distributing them for sale, they remove the made in temporary tape. So after engrossed, the language in item C would read, it shall be unlawful for persons or any retail store, wholesaler, manufacturer, importer, distributor, or business establishment to sell in articles offered as a perishable consumer commodity that has the word Guam or Chamorro or a derivation of such words on the product if such product was not manufactured in Guam, unless the place where the product was manufactured is clearly and permanently labeled on the product. A fifth change made was in sub-item AA. In lines 24 through 26 on page 3 and on lines 1 and 2 of page 4, we added the word product of, so the package can either state made in or product of, and on line 26 we changed the word offering to article in line with the definition. The new language would read, AA, any use of the word Guam or Chamorro or a derivation of such words on consumable commodities if such product was not manufactured in Guam or if the product is not a registered commodity under the Guam Product Seal Permit, shall have the phrase made in or product of followed by the country of origin clearly labeled on the package or container of an article. Example, made in USA, made in China, made in the Philippines, or product of USA, product of China, product of the Philippines. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to show a couple examples of how this would work. And by the way, this is a sample of a product that is currently being sold on Guam that I believe really places properly the identification of the origin of the product. Without discussing the manufacturer, I simply want to share with my colleagues, and I'd like you to perhaps look at these.
Are we allowed to taste it as well to make sure that it's really made? You forgot to send some to the front here as well.
Yes, maybe Speaker Ben can bring it up after he opens it. With this particular product, Madam Speaker, if you look at the label, very well done packaging. It says Guam, USA, but right on the front of the product, right at the bottom of the packaging, it says product of the Philippines. So immediately the consumer who sees this product and wants to buy it, whether it's a tourist or somebody else, knows that it's a product made in the Philippines. I think that's a very honorable way to present the product. It says Guam, USA. You don't have to strain your eyes or try to find small print or figure out where this is made. And if you're a tourist or anyone else, you know what you're buying up front. And that's basically what this bill does. It tries to replicate this particular approach. Madam Speaker, item number 6, another change made in sub-item BB, and perhaps the most significant, is in BB regarding the location of the made-in phrase. In lines 3 through 9 on page 4 of this bill, we address the location and simply state in the front. We took out the specific location of directly placing the origin under the word Guam or derivatives based on the public hearing comments. There were concerns about that. There were some very interesting and sometimes exaggerated illustrations of how bad that would look on the packaging. But we took it all to heart and we accommodated some of those concerns. Additionally, we added the words container of an article and permanent regarding the print, and we addressed the font and with size to be more realistic and accommodating to all concerns involved. So section BB in the substitute bill will now read, the made in or product of phrase shall be included on the packaging or container of an article in legible and permanent print located in the front of the article's package. Such words and fonts shall be equal in length and not less than half the width of an approximate size of the word Guam or Chamorro, or any derivatives used, and shall be conspicuous and legible to the average reader, or average consumer. And the example is the product that's already been marketed on Guam that I've distributed to you that shows right on the front, on the bottom of the packaging, the origin of the product. The seventh change. In subsection item CC, lines 10 and 11 of page 4, the word product is changed to article, and standard labeling practices is defined in section 2, so that will automatically be updated whenever the Food and Drug Administration of the United States updates its definitions. The FDA has guidelines on labeling and specific requirements. So section CC will now read, the origin of the article shall also be placed in the back or side of the packaging in conformance with standard labeling practices. And those, of course, are those from the Food and Drug Administration. And the next change, section 4, effective date. And again, this is based on the hearings that were held, the input that was provided by various individuals and groups that took the time to come and testify on the bill. The effective date gives just over 9 months for implementation of this act. This issue has been a work in progress since February, so all those folks involved or interested in this subject have really been aware of possible changes to the law. In fact, much of the intent is already part of the administrative rules and regulations of the program administered through the Department of Revenue and Taxation. The primary deficiency is in the enforcement, because the current law allows, with no definition, unless the place where the product was manufactured is clearly labeled on the product. And this is really what we are addressing with this measure. During the public hearing, some told us that they've already started the process of trying to conform to the intent of the bill. The language of the effective date was basically extended from the original proposal from 180 days to a longer period of 280 days. So the language of the effective date now in the substitute bill reads as follows. This act shall take effect no later than 280 days after enactment. So, Madam Speaker and colleagues, if you read the first version of the bill, the original bill that was filed, and now you look at the substitute bill, you can see that the committee and those members involved with the bill have made changes to accommodate all sides of this particular matter. We have taken into consideration the labeling requirement, I think, in a reasonable way to address the concerns of visitors and tourists to ensure that they know what they're buying. When they buy a product, they know right up front where it's manufactured. We certainly made certain that it would not be a thing that would be too overly conspicuous or detract from the beauty or the interests of manufacturers and distributors, so that would be fairly displayed. We took into consideration the time frame involved to give the businesses that may be involved in this process more time to comply with this labeling requirement, and extended it to 9 months from the enactment of the law rather than 3 months. And we also took into consideration the excellent suggestions that were made during the hearing on other matters that were reflected in this bill. I would like to say to my colleagues and to also the people of Guam that many years ago, when the Guam Product Seal Law was first developed and passed on by a previous legislature, the intent was really a good one, to help promote Guam products and to provide a way for ingenuity in the manufacturing of products, particularly consumable products, to take off on our island. You know, originally, Madam Speaker, there were over 70 companies on Guam producing consumable products made here. But if you check with the Department of Revenue and Taxation, you will see now that that number has been reduced to just a few. I think we need to renew our efforts to promote more production of local consumable products on Guam, and to really give our visitors and others an opportunity to taste something made here. This bill does not prohibit the importation of consumable products made abroad using the word Guam or Chamorro on the labeling or the packaging. All it does is require, really, that the place of origin be visible, easily visible by the consumer on the front of the package. And as for the sample that has gone around, that is a wonderful, wonderful example of how it should look and how reasonable this bill would be. So I ask my colleagues to please support this bill, and then to please await further discussion on Bill 227 after Bill 226. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome, Senator. On the motion, Senator Yamashita, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I was at this public hearing, and I remember what struck me was one more time it was a Senator Guthert's bill where the public hearing room was filled, and there was much interest, concern, clear deliberation. And I'm not sure if I'm going to be out of order in asking this question, but for Bill 226 and then the companion measure 227, Madam Speaker, I wonder, is it out of order to ask why are we doing 226 when it seems to me that the task force would be the one to come up with what 226 suggests? I don't know if that's an out of order question, but I just kind of think.
So you're saying that we should, you're
It's
right.
a rhetorical question then.
Because the bills were listed in, I guess, numerical, order, but
Okay, well, that's just a thought then that I'm throwing out there because, again, I was there and I remember listening and I see that a lot of the thoughts and concerns were reflected, but then I see how there's going to be a task force put into place for the branding of our island, and it would seem to me that what 226 is proffering is what 227 would actually end up doing. And so I don't know, so I just toss that out there. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
you're welcome, Senator. Senator Munya Barnes on the motion.
Sidus Masi, Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank the good Senator Yamashita for bringing up a valid point. As I was looking over two bills, both bills, Bill 226 and 227, I too had that same question. I was going to ask the author that. And as I looked at some of the products that she shared with us earlier this afternoon, the products that were going around the room, I came to wonder that I don't know if Bill 226 may be premature based on some things that are already existing today. And if we were looking at coming up with a update, and believe me, I support any update, especially when legislation's been in place for almost 3 decades. I don't mind it looking at some kind of update to make sure that the stakeholders who have or want to share an input on this issue can be able to come together as a community and do the pros and cons to the issue on hand. So for me, I don't know if that's a question that needs to be yielded or if we can take a minute recess and just talk to the author to see what we can do on this issue.
We will take a brief recess.
Sidus Masi. So Senator Mabini, then Senator.
The legislature is back in session, and on the motion, yes, I have Senator Munya Barnes, Senator Mabini, and Senator Blas so far.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to let me speak to the author of the legislation in reference to the question that I proffered earlier. And with that being said, I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity. We'll continue to hear from my colleagues to hear what they have to say in reference to both bills that are presented before us. So thank you very much.
Welcome, Senator. Senator Mabini, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I stand in full support of Bill 226, and I wanted to share some of my thoughts. I know that in our society we live in one where it's really a buyer beware market. And we should, and even our tourists should be aware. But unfortunately, that's not always the case. In fact, I know that for some people, they don't care where it's made as long as they have the label there. But many do care, and many do care about the quality of what they're purchasing, especially the quality of, or the kind of tourists that come to Guam. And because of that, I believe that we should take responsibility and ownership of the kind of products that bear the labels like Guam or Chamorro or whatnot, because those are what sells. The individuals who come here on vacation don't necessarily, they can get mangoes where they, or dried mangoes where they come from. They could probably get the best chocolate. They could probably get great soap. They could probably get dried banana chips and all that. But what they're doing is they're buying here because on the box or in the packaging it says Guam or it says Chamorro. So if that's the case, then what the value is not so much what's inside the package. For a lot of them, it's also what's outside. They're purchasing something because they believe it is a Guam product. It is something from Guam. It's something they can go back and share with their families and friends and say, here it is. And then only to be surprised to say, oh, it's made in this country or not in Guam. So I believe that Bill 226 protects what we value. And we value, in this case, the name that bears where we live, which is Guam. And I know that there's measures for buy, think, support, local. Think, support, and buy local. And I believe the following bill, 227, will kind of continue supporting that, continue moving the efforts. And I do hope that the task force continues to work hard to see how we can maybe make some marketing efforts for the Buy Guam seal products only kind of thing. I did want to share one story with you. I spoke with one of the local manufacturers of some consumable products, and I asked them, gosh, why isn't your product, and by the way, I have not had any retail experience or whatnot, but I was surprised why their products, the Guam products, are usually set in the back shelf, and of course, the others are in the front shelf. And I didn't realize, of course, that there's high premium rate to be situated right along the frontage, like when I go shopping at Kmart. I mean, usually, when I get to the tourist side of the aisle, store, the first things I see are those products that are in question right now. And those that are locally made are on the back shelf. And that's because the floor space in the front has such a high premium price. I mean, sometimes maybe as high as $100,000. And she said to me, if she could afford that, then why is she even making chocolate? Or making this or making that to sell. So, we're not only protecting the value of the name, we're also protecting the people that we're encouraging to be entrepreneurs, to keep the money here in our market. Now, I know that the other companies who are out there are worried about, or they advocate for keeping it the way it is because they want to preserve the jobs that they have for the distributorship. I don't believe that this bill is going to affect that. All this is about the labeling. They can bring in the products. They just have to abide by a labeling standards that our customs and quarantine individuals would be able to use to help decide and decipher whether it meets the requirements. And that's all that is. And I do hope that my colleagues do support Bill 226 and the subsequent Bill 227. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome, Senator. On the motion, I recognize Senator Blas.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, sitting here and listening to all the different discussions both on and offline, and it's helping to build, consensus, hopefully. And Madam Speaker, initially I had some of the same concerns that was brought up by good senator and my sister from Chalampago with regards to, and another concern was brought up by good senator, gentlewoman from Tumuning, with regards to maybe we were putting the cart before the horse before the task force, the establishment of the task force before this bill. And that said I'm breaking this down and looking at what the root issue is here. What is the root issue here? Is it the jobs? Is it the labeling? Is it the marketing? What is it? And I have to agree with the immediate retiring speaker with regards to if it's about the jobs, it's just a matter of changing out the labeling on the package. It doesn't say anything about the product. And you've got 280 days to be able to do that. And as in most products, some of us were having joy, by closely reviewing and examining, the products that we are, in some cases, consuming the products. But if we looked at the products, just like even the 70 the mango product, I think over the last 4 years I've seen different versions of that same packaging. And sometimes, places, manufacturers, distributors, as the seasons change, they change out the packaging. They change out the look of the packaging. Okay? It has to be done anyways because I think there's an expiration date with regards to consumables. Okay? So there is that process, and I can see and I appreciate the work that was done by the author and the committee with regards to trying to identify and trying to find a happy medium to all of this. But it goes back to what is the root concern to all of this? And it's wanting to ensure and to protect our image, who we are, what we are. And I really don't see an issue with regards to having to make sure that it's very clear on the product, on the packaging of the product, that the product was made elsewhere. That said, Madam Speaker, and basically to make the bill much better, I'd like to proffer an amendment on page 3, where it states, actually starts on line 15. It shall be unlawful for persons, any retail store manufacturer, wholesale manufacturer, or business established to sell articles offered as a perishable consumer commodity that has the word Guam or Chamorro or a derivation of such words, and I like to say on the packaging of the product. Because if you look at the product, it says on the product, and you look at the definitions, you got to have Guam made in China on each chocolate, the way this is written. So if we put the packaging of the words on the packaging of the product.
That's on page 3.
Page 3, actually line 18.
Line 18?
Yes.
Such words on the product.
So put on the packaging of the product.
Packaging of the product. So
And
we're
then,
going to delete the words, the product. No deletions?
Put,
Okay, such words on the packaging of the product,
Yes.
if such product, okay. All right.
okay,
On that motion, page 3, line 18, on where it says such words on the packaging of the, then go back down to product, if such product was not manufactured. So we're adding the words before the, and then it continues product. Okay, on the amendment? No objections? So ordered.
And then on line 22,
22.
it says, actually starting 21, any use of the word Guam or Chamorro or a derivation of such words on consumable commodities, on the packaging of consumable
On
consumable
the
commodities.
packaging,
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
okay, so add the words on the
Father's gonna
packaging
kill me for
after
saying yes.
commodities. Semicolon. On that, and
Exterior packaging.
on
Yeah.
the
Yeah, exterior packaging.
exterior packaging. On the amendment, without any objections, so ordered.
Gee.
Okay.
Go ahead, go ahead.
On,
That's fine.
okay.
Yeah, it makes a better bill.
Yeah, it does. I just have one question, because one of the problems that was explained to me by the Department of Customs and Quarantine is that when some of these products are imported to Guam, they have an outer packaging, and then when they're delivered to the distributor, that outer packaging is removed, and they have another packaging that's a little different from the outer packaging.
Yeah, no retail.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be better.
Yeah. Yes. So long as it's
So
on
that
package.
they can't
So
play
you want,
any game.
so. No, exterior at retail. So
Exterior.
after exterior at retail.
Point of sale.
Yeah.
How about at point of sale?
On the
So
exterior
long as it's on the package.
retail packaging.
Point of sale.
At point of sale. Okay, let me read that one more time, because you're amending then the amendment that's been passed already. On the exterior retail packaging,
On the exterior packaging at point of sale.
instead of retail? Yeah, exterior, on the exterior
Of the retail packaging. Of the retail packaging.
of the retail packaging at,
No, no, on the
no,
product.
packaging at point of sale. Okay, I want to make sure we get this right, because the clerk, I want to make, she's got to get it right. Do we want to have separate discussion and recess for this, or what?
On exterior and interior packaging at point of sale. Yes. She's correct. At exterior and interior packaging at point of sale.
Exterior and interior of the retail packaging at point of sale.
Interior and exterior of the retail packaging.
That's what you guys are giving me.
Exterior of the packaging at point of sale.
Okay, read it again one more time, because the clerk has to get this right.
At the exterior and interior packaging at point of sale.
On the
Exterior
exterior
and interior
and interior
packaging
packaging
at point of sale.
at point of sale. So
Sometimes they ship it in,
what happened to retail?
it's different inside than outside.
So the,
That would include wholesale and retail.
so the language then to be added on.
Ma'am, Speaker, can we get 1 minute break?
Okay, recess. Recess, 59 seconds.
Senator Frank Blas spoke. Clerk, the amendments were in order? Oh, this is not on the motion. This is on the Frank Blas amendment that was just passed. Senator Guthertz, did you have an updated amendment to the new amendment?
Yes, based on the discussion, Madam Speaker,
Please proceed.
I'd like to recommend that the language be as follows. This is in section AA, section 3AA. Any use of the word Guam or Chamorro or a derivation of such words on, and by the way, we need to insert the word perishable after on. Perishable should be perishable, consumable commodities.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take that on that motion for perishable.
Perishable, consumable.
Okay, no objection.
Okay.
Motion carries.
On, it should be such words on perishable, on the packaging, on the exterior packaging at the point of sale of perishable, consumable commodities. On the exterior packaging at the point of sale of perishable, consumable commodities. Again, at the exterior, on the exterior packaging at the point of sale of perishable, consumable commodities. Did the clerk get that, Madam Speaker?
Clerk, did you get that? On the exterior packaging at the point of sale.
On the exterior packaging at the point of sale of perishable, consumable commodities.
So we're changing,
Well, we added the word perishable to be consistent with section C above.
Yes. Okay, on that motion?
Yeah.
No objection? Motion carries. Clerk, Senator Guthertz, can you please make sure that the clerk, Francis, has that? On the main motion, I'm going to go ahead and address the Vice Speaker on 226. No. Senator Guthertz, Vice Speaker would like to talk on the motion.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of Bill 226, and I'd like to address the concern that some of you rose to earlier about, is this the cart before the horse? This is not. This is a temporary, and I stress that, a temporary solution to address a current problem. 227 will make the permanent suggestions on how to address this problem. Right now, all we're asking for in 226 is truth in advertising, to make it very clear that the product that has Guam, Chamorro, and different things on it, latte stones or whatever, that if they're being imported from elsewhere, that it be very clear, illegible, and what's the other word that they have? Conspicuous placement, that it's clear that it is a product of another country and was not made on Guam. 227 will serve a completely different purpose, Madam Speaker. 227 has as its mission to the commission that's being impaneled or proposed in 227 the right to address, or the responsibility to address, the intellectual property rights of being able to use the word Guam, Chamorro, and to use some of those icons. And it'll be able to make recommendations as to whether or not in the future these products can or will be allowed to use those words on their products. So there is no cart before the horse. This is a temporary solution to address the current problem, to make sure that our Japanese tourists don't go home thinking that they brought a box of candy made on Guam to their friends and relatives, and when they pass it out, somebody turns it over, and the one relative that knows how to read English reads at the bottom that it's made in China, and they're embarrassed. And I look forward to the discussion on 227 because it's imperative that we discuss how we protect our brand and how we protect that intellectual property. Because at the public hearing, it was very clear that some of us who served in the Bradalio administration could not figure out how "I love Guam," which was the slogan for a campaign, all of a sudden is owned by somebody, and we're not allowed to use that ever. And how at GVB we had to pay a license to someone who had gotten the license to "We are Guam." I don't know if you're aware of that, Madam Chairman, but last year we had to pay a license to someone who had the foresight to have gotten the copyright on the "We Are Guam." So when we proposed that as the campaign for the branding of Guam, we had to pay somebody. So I think it's imperative that the commission in 227 be allowed to continue with its proposed plan of being able to address the intellectual and copyright issues, and whether or not you can continue to use Guam and Chamorro when it's not made anywhere near here, it's just being sold here. But in 226, all we're trying to do is to make sure that it's clear that things that are currently being sold and being brought in and being manufactured elsewhere are clearly marked as having been made somewhere else.
Si Diyos Masi, Vice Speaker. Senator Palacios, you're recognized on the main motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I did not at first understand the extent of the problem regarding of course, the product labeling until I heard some of the presentations. The bill, Madam Speaker, as I understand it, does not create any hardship on the current vendors of the product in question. It simply requires that any product not made in Guam be labeled where the product was made. There's nothing wrong with that. Our local entrepreneurs work hard in developing a product, Madam Speaker, and maybe they do a design of packaging only to be copied by rich companies and sold as quote-unquote Guam product. Now, the buyers, especially our visitors, Madam Speaker, should know the difference between a product made in Guam and a product made somewhere and sold in Guam. And the last speaker from Pt. touched on the intellectual rights, and I think there is some merit to that, in that some of our local people created a product, created the packaging, and you know we're a simple business people. We don't comprehend very much the rights for what you call it, the intellectual, the copyright issues and those things. And we just make this product. We started out at home, and then we grew, only to be copied after it's been refined through hard work by our local entrepreneurs. They have to be protected. Their hard work have to be protected. And this bill does not prevent anybody from making anything, but label it where it was made. That's all that this bill is saying. And Bill 226, again, does not interfere with 227 or in some way conflict, because this address to amend the current statute with respect to labeling. That's all. Now, 227 may then later on, once that is established, the commission or the task force can look into 226 and then maybe adjust this to someone. But right now, we need the protection of 226. And I support them, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much.
Buen provecho, Senator Palacios. Anyone else wishing to speak on the main motion? Speaker Pangilinan, you're recognized.
Thank you, and Sidus Marci, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, clearly the issue that we find ourselves in terms of restricting the use free use of Guam and Chamorro in advertising without any qualifiers is the issue here. But it also goes to show you how hard some people are fighting, that marketing and the power of marketing Guam, and that there is a value to that. And we're not saying that you can't profit from the value that is inured to you by living on Guam, having access to that, but you have to be truthful about it. And that's all this is where does it come from? I looked at one of the packaging, and it even goes to the extent of putting the possessive. Guam's banana chips, for example. So this belongs to Guam. It doesn't tell, and then to top it off, it says export quality, so that this is Guam's product, and it's so good that we can export this. It should say import quality. But that really is the issue here. And it's a hard thing to do, but we have to do something to protect our local producers. And I know that the argument is, well, that's what the Guam product seal is meant to do. That you put the latte stone with the product seal there in a circle, and that's what tells you that it is made in Guam. So we now have to get somebody, a consumer, to make the jump from saying Guam's banana chips, this belongs to Guam in the grammar of the advertising world, and then see this thing and says, and it has the Guam product seal, so that means not really. But you can't make that leap. That's why it's not sufficient for the consumer to make that distinction between the packaging and just seeing that Guam product seal. Because they can't make that connection. It's not, and maybe that's the fault of the government or whatever for promoting the Guam product seal, or GVB, or whoever's responsible for promoting it, so that whenever you see that anywhere, you know this is a Guam manufactured product. We know that it's not effective at this time, and so as the good retiring speaker from Chalampago and the one before him from PD said, we got to do something in the meantime. And that something in the meantime is putting something fairly simple. When it says Guam and it's made somewhere else, it'll tell you. But it's the fact that Guam sells. And shouldn't we then say that we should use Guam to sell Guam products? So that when you don't have to make that disclaimer, then the consumer knows that's a Guam product. And it's so simple to then make that distinction. They see on the shelf, Guam Coco Joe's chocolate chips, or Chamorro cookie. And then they see one that says Chamorro cookie, Chamorro cookies, and it says made in China. And so the consumer can tell and distinguish immediately that, hey, this one was made on Guam, and this one was made in China. And he has a choice now, an intelligent and an informed choice with regards to what he's going to purchase. And don't worry about it. I don't think that these companies have to worry about, because that Guam cookies made in China is going to cost $2 a package, and the Guam-made Chamorro chocolate chip cookies probably going to cost $3 a package. So the idea that, oh, we're going to lose all this business, we're never going to undercut the production cost of thousands of products coming in versus the home-based product that's producing hundreds. His pricing is going to have to be different because he's paying somebody here $10 an hour, $12 an hour to work with him. And the guy who's importing that stuff is getting it from somebody who's being paid $1 a day. So he's always going to have that advantage. The fact that you remove Guam, if it's market driven, then it's price driven. And if it's not price driven, then it's going to be quality driven. So we don't have to worry about the fact that, oh my God, I'm going to go broke because I can't compete against Bob McLaughlin or Denise Sauk or anybody else that's going to have to sell their product at a higher price. And they recognize that, but they're going to compete on quality and the fact that it's made here. That's their edge. The guy who's importing it, his edge is he's buying thousands of it and it cost him 10 cents and he's going to sell it for $2. And Bob can't afford to sell it for $2, but he can afford to give a good product, label it a product of Guam, and compete fairly on that portion. Not have to compete with somebody who's bringing something in and trying to pass it off as if it was a Guam product. That's where the disadvantage to Bob occurs, and that's where it's not fair, and that's where we've got to come in and just require that disclosure. We're not saying he can't import that cookie tomorrow. He can continue to do so. He just has to tell everyone that wants to buy it where it's made. You know, and we're looking at ways of creating jobs. These companies, if their product is good and it's cheap, if it says Island Chocolate, I don't think that's going to be such a huge change. Or Paradise Chocolate. They're going to sell their product. They will. But Bob will now have a chance to sell his because there's a distinction between where his product is made and what it represents versus where that other product is made. And that's what's really important. This is something that we need to do now because what we have in place now to inform the consumer of the distinction is just not adequate at this time. And that's why we have to do it in this fashion. And the tourists will spend their money here. But it also means that some of our local manufacturers may be able to hire 2, 3 more people. And there's nothing wrong about that. That's a good. So, Madam Speaker, I appeal to my colleagues to just take a look at it from that perspective. You know, we're trying to find the best way to keep some of the money on island. And so 100% of what it costs to produce that, you know, other than the raw commodity that's brought in, is spent here versus just ocean freight and transportation. So I stand in support of this bill. I think it's a reasonable alternative to what was originally, everybody was being informed as this is what it's going to look like and we're going to drive all of you out of business. It won't. This will not drive anybody out of business. This will mean that they'll have to get more creative or they'll have to compete more on pricing. But it will not shut anybody down just because they have to tell you that that cookie or that dried fruit is from China and not from here. So, Madam Speaker, I rise in support of this, and as so well articulated by my other colleagues, this is something we need to do now because to help our local manufacturers survive, if not grow, because the program that's in place now is not adequate and has loopholes with regards to the way that it's being enforced and can be enforced. And so this just simply makes it clear, easy, enforceable, and even these importers will now just have a clear understanding of what they need to do. And we've already seen some of them, at least a couple of the packages we saw, have made that change. And it really isn't that perilous if you look at it. Because they're not restricted from using the words that they've been able to use in the past and the designs that they've been able to use in the past. and that the only accommodation they have to make is truthfully tell you where the product is made. So I think this is a reasonable accommodation to the concerns that were raised, and it also helps us ensure that we protect the image of Guam, our local manufacturers who struggle every single day against low-cost imports, and it's not just in this area of the industry, but others. It's a struggle the United States faces. But we need to do this for our local manufacturers to give them an opportunity to survive and hopefully thrive. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, Sidusmasi.
Buen provecho, Speaker Pangilinan. I have the Vice Speaker. I'll yield to a point of information or inquiry. Yes, Vice Speaker.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to inform my colleagues that during the hearing, one of the manufacturers was so ingenious that the packaging on the box of candy, when you looked at it, it looked like it had the Guam product seal on the front by the way that it was done.
Designed.
I wish I had kept a copy of that. But I think all of you that were at the hearing remembered when I pointed this out that it looked like it was the Guam product seal on the front of the box. And I said, this is really ingenious because if you looked at it, it looked like it was the Guam product seal, and in fact, it was not. And so I'm just saying, it's getting very creative, and all we're trying to do is get truth in advertising.
Sidusmasi. Anyone else wishing to speak on the main motion? If not, Senator Guthridge, you can close on 226.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and colleagues. This really was a very good discussion, and I'm glad we had some samples of all the different kind of products to share with you folks to get a better idea of what the bill is all about and why it's important. Let me say this, Madam Speaker. The brand that is Guam is being really challenged in some ways, of course, primarily for profit motives. Companies with perhaps very low labor cost or labor connections, because they make their products in foreign countries, are driving born and bred and bled hometown manufacturing companies into closure, and some even into bankruptcy here on Guam. This is allowed to happen because as long as they place a semblance of the country of origin on the packaging somewhere of the products they offer, the products are allowed into Guam. In 1986, the Guam Product Seal Permit Program was established during the term of the 18th Guam Legislature via Public Law 18-24. Our legislative predecessors recognized then that identification and protectionist measures needed to be instituted to protect products made in Guam, and offer the pride and proof that comes with boasting of an authentic product of Guam. It was also recognized then, as it stands today, that we need to help grow our island internally. This is evident in the recent campaign to brand Guam with pride. The island is in a renaissance of sorts with regard to emphasizing our island's culture and heritage. Led by the Guam Visitors Bureau, and by the way, the Guam Visitors Bureau fully endorsed this bill and the companion bill 227. Also led by groups such as We Are Guam, sponsored by GVB, that movement and other movements, even We Are Guahan. There's now more awareness about how proud we should be as a people and an island. Everyone who calls Guam home should be proud. A second campaign of sorts is Buy Local. The Buy Local initiative that is taking shape to encourage everything Guam. This is very interesting to me because I remember Perhaps the first originator of the Buy Local initiative was the late Governor Ricardo Bordallo. And he emphasized the Buy Local initiative with his Green Revolution in developing more agricultural products locally for consumption here. So I'm sure that Governor Ricky is probably looking at us, probably very happy that we're again raising some of these issues. We here at the legislature need to keep in lockstep with this effort. Tony Babauta, our homegrown Washington-appointed Assistant Secretary of the Interior by the President, announced the partnership of the Department of the Interior with the Pacific Center for Economic Initiatives at the University of Guam for the Buy Local movement. This was realized in a formal launch about 2 weeks ago. The Guam Visitors Bureau, the Department of Chamorro Affairs, the OG School of Businesses Pacific Center Economic Initiative, the Small Business Development Center at the University of Guam, the Women in Business and Microcredit Programs all support local entrepreneurship efforts and believe in giving our manufacturers on Guam a hand up and strongly support the passage of this bill. Even Congresswoman Bordallo is taking the support for the Made in Guam cause and local initiatives to the halls of Congress. Her office is drafting legislation at this time that will favor Guam businesses that grow and manufacture products here, consumable products and other types of products. Bill 226 will simply help consumers decide fairly and legibly whether they want a Guam product, a Guam consumable perishable product, or a foreign-made consumable perishable product simply bought into Guam. Bill 226 does not intend to completely restrict the use of Guam or Chamorro or derivative words thereof on a product offered for sale in any tourist-driven economy. Businesses can still use the word that import products to Guam. It simply directs wholesalers and retailers to take ownership of the products they are offering and believe in it enough to represent properly and honestly its country of origin on the front of the packaging. That will be their only cost to comply with this bill should it become law, and make it known where their product was produced. This, Mr. Speaker, will level the playing field and enhance some unique items our island has to offer, particularly consumable, perishable items, because this bill simply addresses consumable, perishable items. This could be the beginning of having some sort of item associated with Guam. For instance, Hawaii has the macadamia nuts or the pineapples that are so synonymous with it. Perhaps we can market products that are synonymous with us, such as Guam Finadeni sauce and things of that nature. In addition to what we already offer that is manufactured here, some wonderful, wonderful food products that are manufactured here. In Guam, this can't happen in the current market because once a budding entrepreneur has an idea and puts it on the market, product made on Guam, consumable product made on Guam, the larger businesses will make a similar item and mass produce it in a foreign country for the sake of cheaper costs and import it into Guam. Because of volume, they will usually corner the market with the product, whether their product is high in quality or simply just available, and this drives out the small local manufacturers. I have visited almost all the large retailers on Guam just to quietly observe how these products are displayed, how they are sold, and how they are bought. From Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C., and the halls of Congress to the local manufacturers here in Guam and members of our island community, it is being recognized that purchasing from within our community and supporting the industries and products that believes in Guam and make products here is important. This ranges from our farmers to our small manufacturers of cookies and candies and salad dresses and sauces and other similar products. The Buy Local initiative is an important opportunity to support Guam's local businesses and to promote the sale of goods harvested or manufactured on island. Products that we offer and showcase tend to, by extension, help identify our culture and our heritage. We appreciate all companies doing business on Guam. I think Guam has perhaps the most laissez-faire business environment anywhere in the United States. And that certainly will not change should this bill become law. All it does is say, look, if you want to import a product into Guam and your packaging says Guam or Chamorro, any word which is a derivative thereof, you need to identify where the product is manufactured on the front of the packaging. Our visitors, as well as our consumers, deserve to know where the product they purchased was made. You can't do that now easily with the majority of these perishable consumable products that are being brought into Guam. Currently, some packaging display accompanying photos of foreign oceans or foreign flowers. We saw one example that displays a very famous place in Hawaii, but the packaging says Guam. And this is done to help sell a particular commodity, a food commodity or a perishable commodity, to unsuspecting folks who believe the product is made in Guam. Frankly, Mr. Speaker, I'm surprised about that kind of packaging because we have beautiful scenery on Guam, and it doesn't cost that much money to take a picture of our beautiful scenery and to incorporate that on packaging. So we don't need foreign pictures of different places with the word Guam in it on packaging. And I think it's unfortunate that that is happening. Upon seeing the word Guam, Chamorro or derivatives of such, with accompanying photos of various tropical scenes, consumers take this packaging at face value and believe that they are purchasing something unique to Guam. Well, it's time they know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth regarding where the product they are purchasing was made. That is simply ethics. That is honesty. That is fair play, and that is the right thing to do. Bill 226 simply requires that the packaging of a product perishable product contain the product's origin on the front. Nothing more or nothing less. So I ask my colleagues to please support this bill, and let's move this bill forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator Guthrie. It's on the motion to place Bill 226 in the voting file. Any objection? Hearing and seeing none. On the, it is now 5:15. The chair will recess until 9 tomorrow morning.